So many people that waste their money on cheaply made yet highly priced stuff and furniture, while it doesn't have to be so damn expensive. Save your money, even if you have not a single cent to worry about. The next generation you leave behind is going to get it even tougher than we do. At least leave something good behind when you are gone, like these things which are for them something to learn and think about. Studies funded by the soft drink industry are more likely to mask links to obesity and type 2 diabetes, according to a new report. He added that biases in industry-funded studies were not usually due to poor methodology, but due to inherent problems in their design, including poor choice of comparators and problems with the way data is analyzed and reported. The applications of field pattern theory are still emerging, but one field they may apply to is quantum mechanics. In quantum mechanics, the probable locations of objects such as electrons are represented as clouds in which the object is likely to be found, and the shape of those clouds can be described using wave-like equations. But when an observer measures the position of an object, the wave-like behavior collapses into a single point of location, like a particle. Thus, objects behave as both particles and as waves. The Atlantic coast of the peninsula can be thought of as the cold side, and the sea on this coast tends to be clear and cold, with a variety of seaweeds growing along the rocky shoreline. On a hot day, however, this cold water can be very refreshing and is said to be less hospitable to shanks, which prefer warmer waters. The elaborate and refined Japanese tea ceremony is meant to demonstrate respect through grace and good etiquette, as demonstrated here by Genshitsu Sen, 15th Grand Master of the Urasenke Tea School. The human animal's status as the only clever tool user who can talk about our feeling is crumbling. Prairie dogs can make up words for new animals. Crows are born with the ability to make tools. Elephants recognize and stroke the bones of a lost family member. As biologists delve into these subjects, they're demonstrating that we're not nearly as unique as we once thought. It's a perfect time, scientifically speaking, to reassess our place in the animal kingdom. The key to obtaining high levitation stability is the geometrical design of the two plates. A proper ratio of their sizes and vertical spacing allows the warm air to flow around and efficiently capture the levitated objects when they drift away from the center. Another sensitivity factor is that the thermal gradient needs to be pointing upward. Even a misalignment of 1 degree will greatly reduce the levitation stability. The researchers analyzed 304 recordings of stylistically diverse music from across the world to reveal the common features. Although they found no absolute universals, they found dozens of statistical universals, specifically, features that were consistently present in a majority of songs across different world regions. These included features related to pitch and rhythm as well as social context and interrelationships between musical features. The speaker is a marine biologist who became interested in the strandlopers, an ancient people who lived on the coastline, because of their connection to the sea. Their way of life intrigued him. As a child he had spent a lot of time by the sea, exploring and collecting things, so he began to study them, and discovered some interesting information about their way of life, how they hunted, what tools they used, and so on. The technology, known as a brain-computer interface, records and transmits signals through electrodes, which are tiny pieces of material that read signals from brain chemicals known as neurotransmitters. By recording brain signals at the moment a person intends to make some movement, the interface learns the relevant electrical signal pattern and can transmit that pattern to the limb's nerves, or even to a prosthetic limb, restoring mobility and motor function. The tsunamis could provide crucial information about the habitability of ancient Mars. The first one occurred when the planet must have been relatively warm and amenable for life, because it carved out backwash channels as it returned to the sea. By contrast, the planet had become much cooler by the time the second tsunami hit the waters, apparently flash froze after flowing the surface. The wetland impacts of the spill documented by the team included both the loss of wetlands due to shoreline erosion, and island fragmentation, where small islands are broken into even smaller islands, creating more shoreline. Land lost from fragmentation is unlikely to be re-established, particularly in this part of the Mississippi River Delta where levees prevent an influx of new sediments from the river. This will alter natural coastal defenses against flooding. There are many kinds of pond, but nearly all are small bodies of shallow, stagnant water in which plants with roots can grow. Water movement is slight and temperatures fluctuate widely. The wealth of plants ensures that during daylight hours oxygen is plentiful. However, at night, when photosynthesis no longer takes place, oxygen supplies can fall very low. There are perhaps three ways of looking at furniture. Some people see it as purely functional and useful, and don't bother themselves with aesthetics. Others see it as essential to civilized living and concern themselves with design and how the furniture will look in a room. In other words, function combined with aesthetics. And yet others see furniture as a form of art. There are three main interpretations of the English Revolution. The longest-lasting interpretation was that the revolution was the almost inevitable outcome of an age-old struggle between Parliament and Crown. The second sees it as a class struggle, and a lead-up to the French and other revolutions. Finally, the third interpretation sees the other two as too fixed, not allowing for unpredictability, and that the outcome could have gone either way. This finding is understandable in certain cases in spite of its high significance. That is because energy efficiency of building operation just represents a single aspect of sustainability. Today, perhaps the best thing about open source 3D printing is the open source part. Makers, as 3D printer open source are called, not only use designs posted on the internet, they also post their own and provide feedback. It creates positive scientific karma, researchers said. You can share your ideas and get help from the community, and it speeds things up so much. It's like having a global R&D team dedicated to your work. Today, the best performing speech recognizers are, like many other state-of-the-art artificial intelligence systems, based on neural networks, virtual networks of simple information processors roughly modeled on the human brain. Much of the new chip's circuitry is concerned with implementing speech recognition networks as efficiently as possible. Using two discrete models, one modeling the attractiveness of individual houses to burglars and the other modeling burglar movement, the authors of the UCAS study developed a continuum model based on a system of parabolic differential equations. Using this system as a starting point, the authors apply bifurcation theory, or the analysis of a system of ordinary differential equations under varying conditions, such as social or economic conditions of a neighborhood, to extend the scope of analysis. When buying a house, for example, it's best to let our unconscious mull over the many variables. But when we're picking stocks and shares, intuition often leads us astray. The trick is to determine when to lean on which part of the brain, and to do this, we need to think harder and smarter about how we think. While far fewer people these days write a letter and therefore have less use for stamps, there are still a few categories of the stamp which attract collectors. Stamps in common use for an indefinite period, until the price goes up, are called definitive issues, while a more collectible type of stamp is the commemorative issue, honoring people, events and anniversaries.
Physicists thought they had a solid grasp on what made up matter. They knew that atoms contained electrons surrounding a positively charged nucleus. They also knew that each nucleus contained a number of protons and positively charged particles. Combinations of those two particles made up all of the matter in the universe. Female hummingbirds don flashy feathers to avoid being bothered by other hummingbirds. They tend to have bright blue heads and throats. But mate choice doesn't seem to drive these females' pretty plumage, since males don't appear to prefer the blue females. Therefore, bright colors may help ladybirds blend in with the guys, and as a result, feed for longer without harassment from other hummingbirds. The solid waste management issue is the biggest challenge to the authorities of both small and large cities in developing countries. This is mainly due to the increasing generation of such solid waste and the burden posed on the municipal budget. In addition to the high costs, the solid waste management is associated with lack of understanding over different factors that affect the entire handling system.
Since Plato, philosophers have described the decision-making process as either rational or emotional. We carefully deliberate or we blink and go with our gut. But as scientists break open the mind's black box with the latest tools of neuroscience, they're discovering that this is not how the mind works. Our best decisions are a finely tuned blend of both feeling and reason, and the precise mix depends on the situation.